Welcome to the Times of Israel's The Reel Schmooze. I'm your host, Amanda Borschel-Dan, here with our movie maven, Jordan Hoffman, for all the entertainment news and movie reviews a Jew can use. So, Jordan, thank you so much for joining me after a week off.
I know, it's funny. We haven't spoken in a fortnight because we spoke on New Year's Eve, and
Correct.
it's now 2 weeks later. I need my Amanda fix, but it's now mid-January, pretty much, and you were on a big vacation, which is fun. I want to hear a little bit about it, however much you feel comfortable sharing, and I'll tell you a little bit about what I've been doing. Never in my life have I broken a New Year's resolution faster than I have in 2026.
I love
I,
it.
I intimated on the previous podcast that I was really going to try and pump the brakes on social media. That was my, I wasn't saying I'm going to lose 10 pounds or I'm going to go to the gym every day. I was like, no, I'm just going to stop looking at X and Blue Sky and Instagram and Facebook and all that crap just because it is turning my brain into tapioca pudding. I really have to stop. And then what happened in early 2026 in like rapid succession, just an insane news cycle. The incident in Venezuela, the action that Trump took, taking the Maduro and his wife on a unexpected vacation to New York. This was a situation that's happening right now in Tehran. The incident that happened in Kew Gardens, Queens, where very close to where I used to live, where a very small group of anti-Israel activists and really went over the top and said, basically said Hamas is the best, which, they were always saying on the inside, but decided to say on the outside. And then the failure of our new mayor to even acknowledge it for a full 24 hours when everybody else in New York politics, in and out of New York politics, is like, oh, that's not good. Like even some of the hardcore lefts are like, well, that's the line. We found the line. It's right there. But our new guy, I was giving him the benefit of the doubt. And then a lot of other crap happened too. Oh, and then Bob Weir of the Grateful Dead died, which was very upsetting to me. And the Grateful Dead, as I've probably written about on Times of Israel, yes, I definitely have, because I interviewed Mickey Hart for the Times of
Oh,
Israel.
right. Yep.
The Grateful Dead has, for reasons that no one really understands, has always had a very significant Jewish fan base. And so that was, when he died, I just wasn't expecting it. That really punched me in the stomach. So I've just
Though
been
he was not
glued.
Jewish. I mean,
No, no,
because
no, no, no. Yeah,
honestly,
yeah.
because part of my work is finding the jangle in
Right.
almost any, noteworthy
Yeah,
story. When I
yeah.
heard that Bob Weir had died, I
You double
immediately
checked.
checked if he was,
Yeah.
yes, not
No,
double
none of no,
checked. Yeah.
the only one who was Jewish was Mickey Hart, who was not an original member of the group, but he was a core member. And he's one of the. They're all interesting. Well, now most of them are gone. But he's a very interesting dude. Anyway, the point is this: just glued to social media. I got it, and it's really bad. Oh, and then the other biggie, and I don't know how much of an impact this is making in Israel. I'm curious to hear from you. Is just the amplification of what's happening with ICE, particularly in
Right.
Minneapolis and Minnesota. I mean, it's kind of just more of the same. But then, when a woman died, I mean, we knew this. I mean, it was just like. Eventually, with ISIS just running around and like people protesting, like eventually somebody's going to get killed. Eventually, this is going to happen, and then it happened, and it's like, oh, there you go. And the videos online are always out of context. I mean, that's always been true since in the history of media. You never know what happened before they started recording, and you never know what happens after they recorded. But there are so many violent videos of having in Minneapolis. I know people from Minnesota. This is like the most mellow place on earth. So it's just been nuts. So I failed myself. I failed you because I said I was going to reel it in, but now I really am going to start, because otherwise, my next correspondence with you, I will be in an insane asylum if I keep this up. So that's what's going on. But you had a great early start to 2026. You were in Great Britain
Correct.
with your son.
Hmm.
You mentioned it last time, so this is not a
Yep.
secret. And how was that experience? Did you? Because I've been to Britain many times, and I've always had a blast there. I think it's great.
Yep. I do enjoy going to Britain, though I have to say it was the coldest trip there that
Mm.
I've ever taken. And I'm really spoiled being an Israeli. Today we're having a very wintry day, and I did, in fact, turn on the heat in my
Oh,
office
man.
room. But that is rare. I think I can count on one hand the number of times I've turned the heat on in anywhere in the house
Oh,
the
wow.
whole winter. So we're there, and it's like -4, -7 degrees centigrade, which is in your reckoning like terrible,
Yeah,
and in my
yeah.
reckoning as well. So we're sitting outside in Manchester in the snow
Mm.
watching a Manchester City versus Chelsea game. Wow, I almost forgot who were playing there. And it was fantastic. And my
Great.
son was over the moon until minute like 93 or so, which is when Chelsea evened up to 1-1. And so it was kind of funny because I said to my son, Oy vavoy, oy vavoy, being very Jewish. And my son, being very Israeli, said to me, "Die, Ima, die, 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 Ima," which in Hebrew means enough, stop.
Oh,
He did
man.
not mean to murder me
No, no, no,
exactly.
no,
Well, he
no.
may have
Right.
actually, but so it was my first ever competitive professional football
Mhm.
experience. It was really cold. I would
Yeah,
not recommend doing that in the
yeah,
winter. And I
yeah,
have to say, like, I know these guys make gazillion million dollars,
yeah.
but they turn on the sprinklers in this outdoor soccer pitch,
Really?
football, sorry,
Yeah.
right before the game. And you can just imagine that the grass is
Oh.
freezing and
Like little
slick.
knives. It would be like little knives on the ground,
Exactly.
yeah.
And so on the one hand, again, multimillionaires, these guys, but on the other hand, it's like, whoa. And it's all part of their like home court advantage. And because we took a tour of the stadium the day before, the Etihad Stadium, and I'd never been in such a place. And it was just fascinating. And I got to
Yeah.
ask all my questions and annoyed everyone. But it was great fun. So it was a good trip overall.
Wow,
Thanks,
that and
Jordan.
so ultimately the game was a tie because in soccer they can yeah, so was your son I mean, they didn't lose, so that's good.
Right, and I think
Yeah.
just the overwhelming
Yeah.
joy of
Oh,
being there
great. That's
carried him
awesome.
through this,
A
non-win.
non-win, that's a way of putting it. They didn't lose, they non-winned. Okay, that's great. And then you did other tourist stuff, you were in London, you were doing all the things.
Totally.
Did you go to Brick Lane and have a hot Indian curry as I suggested?
No, because,
Okay.
this particular 13-year-old has a very narrow sense of what is edible, so,
Okay.
there was no, out of the realm of hamburger type, eating really, and
Okay.
cinnamon buns. He was very
Oh,
into the cinnamon buns,
cinnamon
so
buns
we
are
had
but the
yep.
hamburgers in England aren't so great, but that's okay.
Yes, I would
Hamburgers
agree.
in
Yeah.
Israel aren't that great either in
Oh,
my,
oh, I will take you around next time you're here.
and last question, did you because we see what's on the news, we see what's on social media as I kvetched about a minute ago. Did you come face to face with any blatant anti-Israeli, anti-Zionist, anti-Semitic sentiment while you were there, or was it a
Yeah.
mellow trip? You did? Oh.
So we did,
Oh.
and, I haven't left the country really since the war started, October 7th, 2023, and, it was shocking to me because we're just walking around Manchester, which is, like a mill city, essentially. There's a lot of canals and a lot of big buildings, next to these canals, beautiful red brick buildings, much, much gentrified, many shishi cafes and things of that nature along the canal routes. And then you come face to face, bonk, with a, boycott Israel sticker or a free Palestine sticker. And it's just like, wow, amazing. And then, that combined with the overwhelming cold just made me think the whole time, why would any Jew live here? Just move to Israel, obviously. And
Okay.
then in
Well, this
London as well, we were in
yeah,
a bookshop and there was
sure.
this one book was featured next to the till, next to the cash register. And it was a Noam Chomsky book on Palestine, and obviously, he's Jewish and all of that, but it was a very not supportive of Israel book, shall we
Sure,
say?
sure. Yeah, but
So
keep in mind,
yeah,
surprising that it would be there. Noam Chomsky, also a pal of Jeffrey Epstein, right? I mean, it wasn't didn't
that's
you notice
true.
that?
Yes.
Well,
Yep.
that's table stakes. I mean, I up until very recently lived in Queens, New York, and I would get up in the morning to get a quart of milk, and I would see 17 stickers, um, against Israel. But no one recognized your son's accent and said, "Get out of here, Israeli." None of that. So
No, I
okay,
would say
good,
no,
good.
and when people ask me, it was kind of the first time I've ever really, pondered
Oh.
how I should answer where I'm from. For some reason, many people thought I was French, I don't know why.
Well, Amanda, as
Um
you know, you have a very, and it's been legendary. You have a very specific accent that it's specific to you only. So,
Right.
no one knows where you're from, but I would imagine your son has a more typical Israeli accent. So what did you
Yes.
say when people said, "Oh, where are you visiting us from?" What would you say?
Well, I kinda yeah, it's so complicated,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
if
yeah.
the person was, for example, an Uber driver named Mohammed,
Yeah, yeah.
I said I grew up in Canada,
Yeah.
and if the person was, somebody who seemed more, available to the idea of Israel, I may say I was a reporter from Israel, but it was really, really bizarre to me
Yeah,
because
you don't know what's gonna set
you
somebody off.
don't
You don't
know.
know whether it's worth it. If it's a quick social
Exactly.
interaction of, like, you say you're especially if you're in someone's car, you just don't know.
Right.
And you're
And
bet
I'm protecting my
Of
13-year-old
course,
at
you're
the
there
same
with your
time,
kid.
so
And
yeah.
part of and you don't wanna be in hiding. You wanna be like, "No, this is who I am." But you don't know. Like, it's funny, I lived in Queens for 100,000 years, and I knew someone who was from a part of the world that is, historically not particularly thrilled with the Jews, let's just say that. So, I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that I'm Jewish, but I always kept it to myself in interactions, and at one point, just before I left, actually, the last time I saw this person, he was like, "Hey, you're Jewish, right?" And I was like, "Yes, yes, I am." And he's like, "The Jews are great, and Israel is great, and everybody gives Israel a hard time. They don't see the full picture." And I was flabbergasted. I was like, "Oh, I wish we'd had this beforehand." And then he started ranting. He was actually to the right of me with his pro-Israel stance. I was like, "Whoa, settle down a little bit there. I believe in peace and harmony. Eventually, a two-state solution would be nice." And it was a funny encounter. But so you never know. But
You
also,
never
you got
know.
to weigh, is it worth even opening the door? If you're just there to
Yep.
buy a pack of gum, then where are you from? I'm from Canada. Bye. My son here is from Canada, but he talks different. So long. But if you're with somebody and you're at it, really, really touching them and encountering them, and you say, "Look, here's where I'm from, and if you want to know more about my life, I'll tell it to you." So
Right,
anyway,
exactly.
Greg.
So we've been really, emphasizing the schmooze aspect of our name, and so let's transition to the REEL aspect,
Yeah.
and, we have a quick jangle.
Yeah.
In our previous episode, Jordan and I talked about Marty Supreme,
Yeah.
which we both really full-heartedly said, "Not bad,"
Right.
our
The full
highest
not bad.
marks.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
A full-on not bad.
Yeah.
We both got a lot of, response to that. Some of, our listeners said that it was an anti-Semitic film, and especially for how the Holocaust is treated in it, but not only, and we definitely weighed, these emails and really happy for all responses always. But there's some, jangle on this, Mighty Supreme, right, Jordan?
Yeah, well, just the other day, there's an awards ceremony called the Golden Globes, which is kind of a. I mean, all awards are ridiculous. I mean, you saw a soccer team, and one guy hits a ball into a net, and that guy wins. That's just is Marty Supreme better than Hamnet or One Battle After Another or some of these other awards? And who can say? I mean, it's ridiculous to give out awards. Nevertheless, Timothy Chalamet, nice Jewish boy from New York City, who has wanted an Academy Award for a long time. He's young; he's only 29, but he's been in the biz for well over a decade. He's always doing great work. He did win a Golden Globe Award, which is exciting for him and exciting for boosters of the film. He's guaranteed a nomination for the Oscars soon. He's kind of the front runner to win, but it's interesting. People who really study the Oscars will tell you that it would be unlikely for a young man to win. Young women win all the time, and but young men tend not to in recent. They give it to an older guy at the end of his career. But he's been doing good stuff. I mean, last year he played Bob Dylan in what I thought was a very very good movie. He's in the Dune movies, which I don't know. I prefer the books to the movies, but that's me. But anyway, so he wanted that was nice, and he doesn't talk about politics much or at all, really. He's just a very handsome, good-looking, fun, and everybody loves him, and we love him too. So Mazel Tov to Timothy Chalamet on his Golden Globe Award. And the other thing is the group that I'm a member of, the New York Film Critics Circle. We had our big gala event, and we gave this best screenplay prize to Marty Supreme. Now, kind of the way it works is that although it's unofficial, best screenplay is kind of like the bronze medal. I mean, there's the best film, then best director, best screenplay, and it tends to go to three different people, and one is like the top prize, the second prize. The bronze medal is good because Marty Supreme is a pretty in-your-face film, as we've talked about at length in our last episode. So the fact that it won anything is still nice. So the writers of Marty Supreme, Josh Safdie and Ronald Bronstein, two nice Jewish boys from New York, they won. And Isaac Mizrahi, another nice Jewish boy from New York, gave the introduction, and he was hilarious. It was a nice bit
Lovely.
of Borscht Belt at that event. And then I also spoke at the event, and it was very amusing. You can go to my Substack if you want to hear the audio of me killing it with some good jokes. But it was
I
nice.
would love that. Yes, I want to link. Yes,
And
definitely.
someone else, and this is a little bit of a tea for next week and very newsworthy, someone else who gave a very moving speech was the Iranian, I don't know if I should say dissident or not, Iranian artist who has been imprisoned and under house arrest for much of his career, Jafar Panahi. And if you're saying, oh, I'd like to know more about Jafar Panahi, the good news is that you will know more on next week's episode of The Reel Schmooze
Correct.
when we
Yes, we
discuss.
actually got organized. We talked about what we were going to do. So yes, that is next week's episode. What's the name of the film again?
His new film is called It Was Just an Accident, and it's I think, a very good film. But he has a number of films in his back catalog, and we're going to do a double feature. We have yet to truly nail down what the second film will be, but
Correct.
maybe we will by the end of this episode.
Yeah, I
and that's
think
going to be
we're
next week.
leaning towards something about driving, but we'll talk about it.
Yes.
So today, we're going to a break in 1 second, but today we're going to discuss a film that is also, I believe, shortlisted for the Oscars, and
Correct,
this is Holding Liat. So we're going to talk about Holding Liat when we're back.
3 million Israelis are dealing with trauma since October 7th. To help Israelis heal, Hadassah is there, with the largest rehabilitation center in Jerusalem, world-renowned medical centers, and youth villages. It's said, saving a life saves the world. Imagine helping millions. This is Hadassah, a life-changing force in Israel and the world.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our movie maven, Jordan Hoffman. So, Jordan, I just finished watching Holding Liat a couple hours ago. So it's still incredibly raw to me, and I might cry. I'm just warning you right now.
It's a big movie.
Listeners,
It's
it's a
big,
big movie. It's intense. It's I would put it in that capital I important category.
Yeah.
Which is a new label for us. But it is really worth watching, I think, especially because it's now in North America, right? What is the kind of release that it has in North America right now?
Well, very small, but it is in theaters. In New York City, you can see it at Film Forum, which, interestingly enough, Film Forum is a great spot. I love Film Forum. They've shown a lot of the movies that we talked about. Remember, we talked about the Roman Polanski film a few weeks ago. That was the one place that would show it, and also the Palestinian film, The Voice of Hind Rajab, which we talked about maybe 3 weeks ago, is also played at Film Forum, and I think it's still there. And they've been kind of using that as a look, we are free speech 101. It's like we're showing this very heavily applauded Palestinian film and this very heavily applauded Israeli film. Like, come visit us.
That's interesting and not shocking to me at all, because I would put them both almost in the same category, actually. Holding Liat is just my rundown on it. It's a tri-generational look at the disaster that happened on October 7th in a very micro way. We're looking at one family and how they're dealing with it, mostly through the different generations. We have the grandfather, the sister/mother generation, and then we have the grandchildren generation. And these are the three, I would say, framings of the film. And each of these generations has a slightly different perspective. The grandfather, his name is Yehuda Benin, correct? Yeah,
Beinin. Beinin. I
right.
don't know how he pronounced
Benin.
it, but
Okay,
yeah.
sorry. So Yehuda Benin, he comes off as this kind of 1970s peacenik type person. He made Aliyah at some point with his family, I believe, with his brother at least. And they're all kibbutznikim, which is incredibly important for understanding the nuance of this film. And just before we dive in a little more into what this film is about, I think nuance is the word that should be emphasized more than anything else. This film is very representative of the Beinin family and the Beinin family alone. Okay. And maybe the peacenik movement, which is the Beinin family and 10 other people at this point in Israel. I'm kidding, but not really. Okay. So if you look at it through this lens, it's a really good film, but I don't think it should be called even an
Mm.
Israeli film
I'm really
because,
glad you brought that up.
yeah.
I'll touch back on that in a minute because I'm always
Okay.
watching things from the perspective of how they're received in New York media because that's where I live. And that's been my career for so long. And this movie is, as you're building toward an extremely left-wing film, and in Israel, it would almost be considered, I don't know, sacrilegious to Zionists, but it's being
So I'll
received.
just say, like,
Yeah,
my husband watched about 20 minutes of it and then our power went out. So we couldn't
he's,
watch anymore. It's
he said,
very
"Thank
wintry
God."
here.
Yeah, yeah.
And he said, and this is a quote, "This film is dangerous for Americans to see because they'll think that this is how Israelis think." And the bottom line is no, Israelis don't think like this, that there should be a rainbow at the end of this, and nobody almost is under this kind of illusion. But just to back it up, the story is basically October 7th, 2023, Liat and her husband Aviv are, they think at the time, taken hostage in the first huge hostage release at the end of November 2023, early December. Liat comes back, and the family realizes at that point that the father, Aviv, has been murdered in either on October 7th or in Hamas captivity shortly thereafter. And the struggle goes week by week from week two. It starts incredibly early, which is amazing that the family members or a close circle of this family are documentary filmmakers, and they started rolling. And the grandparents, especially in the beginning, are the main characters. The grandfather, Yehuda, again, this super peacenik 1970s type, like freedom rider approach to American politics and Israeli politics, hates the prime minister, Benjamin Netanyahu, has always hated him, and even from the very beginning is basically saying that Netanyahu is using the sword to stay in power and stay out of jail, blah, 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 all this kind of rhetoric. And then we have this trip, this delegation in which the grandson and the grandfather, the grandson, the couple that was taken hostage have three children, Ofri, Netta and Aya, and the youngest, Netta, whose apartment was torched.
Yeah, I
He
mean,
barely made it out alive from Kibbutz
he's
Nir Oz.
shaking from PTSD. I mean, the kid
Yeah.
should not have gone on this trip, but continue.
Yeah, but they wanted to use his raw emotion in this American-Israeli delegation to try and sway hearts and minds of American politicians to try and get the hostages back. And in the mix is also the sister of Liat called Tal, who, and I think this is probably one of the wisest things that was said in the entire film. She left Israel 9 years ago at the time of the filming. And she said, because as an Israeli, every Israeli knows somebody who was killed by a Palestinian, and every Palestinian knows somebody who was killed by an Israeli, and I can't take it anymore.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so she left, and it's so true. This is the bottom line, the realistic picture of Israel. This is a truth. It is an axiom. and they're all trying to get their loved ones out in DC, and the grandfather increasingly is frustrated and just, venting his
Yeah.
extremely far left anger and spleen on anyone. And
Yeah.
then comes this kind of pivotal moment
Yeah.
where they meet up in the hall with this Palestinian advocate called, I think, Mansour something, can't remember the full name, and the grandfather finally meets a kindred spirit. He was frustrated with all the Israelis, he's frustrated with all the Americans. He meets this Palestinian and he's like, "You don't understand how much we agree on things." And so just layer after layer of nuance in this film.
Yeah. It's really interesting. I mean, there's so much to talk about here, just the way the film is made. I mean, whenever there's a documentary like this where it's supposed to be fly on the wall, you got to remember nobody forgets a camera's over their shoulder. Even if they're at the Capitol meeting Senator Mitch McConnell and other very important people, and even if their kid is kidnapped and possibly dead, you still remember when there's a camera there. So there's always a little bit of a performance there. But that scene
The
is
I would
really
say
remarkable.
it it feels very raw, and I think
Yeah,
these
yeah.
people are so, I mean, taking myself back to October 7th, 2023 in
Yeah.
Israel, we were walking around in clouds of grief.
Of course,
And,
yeah.
when you're in a cloud of grief, you just say whatever you
You
want to
don't care,
say.
yeah. And
Yeah.
and that's a key point, which I was getting to, which is that, although there were times when I really kinda disagreed with Yehuda, I had to say to myself, "The guy's kid is missing," you know? I mean, he's older and she's an adult, she's, 49, he's still his kid. So, you gotta give the guy a break. I mean, if he's like, and he even says when his wife, who was a little bit more feet on the ground, was kinda like, "Why don't you stick to the script?" Because they brought him to America because he was an American Israeli dual citizen. He's gonna talk to these senators and, just try to get them, like you said, just awareness of what's going on in the situation over there, and, like, "We need your help." They kinda give him a script, and they're like, "Don't get off the script," and he does. He starts screaming and yelling about Netanyahu. You're kinda like, "Well, you gotta cut him a break," and he says, "This is how I deal with it. Like, I can't, if I think about the fact that my daughter is possibly dead or being tortured right now, I will collapse. So I have to kind of think about it from a macro political point of view." And that's his right. I mean, who am I to tell him not to do that? But it is, those scenes in the US are amazing, when the family is like, his daughter, which is Liat's sister, even yells at him, and she has, I think, one of the funniest parts of the moment. She's like, "You think I wanted to make nice with Senator McConnell?" And then we're allowed to swear on the Reel Schmooze. She goes, on the real on the she says, "That fucking asshole, you think I wanted to be nice to him?" Um, but shut up and do it. And then there's that scene in the hall when he meets the Palestinian, and I'll take it in good faith that those two guys would have found some common ground. They're kind of whispering to each other, and he is like, almost, it's like a scene, like, "If they catch me talking to you, something bad's gonna happen." And, like, I don't know. I don't think it's like East Germany where they would have disappeared
Well,
this
I
guy,
wrote down
but
his name actually.
yeah.
His name was Ahmed Mansour, and
Mhm.
he says, I think one of the other, like, takeaway moments, he says, "I wouldn't have even shaken your hand before October 7th, 2023, but now you understand."
Right. I mean, that's sort of the thesis of the film, which is not new, but it's the thesis is the way Israel and Palestine are today are the way it was before October 7th, and certainly the way it is now is unsustainable, and change needs to happen. And I don't think that's a I don't think that's something that's scary for Americans to see. But I do think something that's important was an old joke that I thought of quite a few times during this film, which goes a little something like this. An anti-Zionist Jew and a Zionist Jew go into a bar, and the bartender says, "Get out, we don't serve Jews here." So,
Yeah,
that's
100%.
that's
Yeah,
something that I
definitely.
was thinking
Yep.
about a lot during this, which is, you know, uh, eh, it's pretty much right. The movie ends with, so Liat's, as you mentioned, she survives and she goes back to her life, and she was an educator, and it mentions that, she used to work at Yad Vashem, and they show her at the end, she's back at Yad Vashem, like, with a youth group or something,
Guiding
and
her class, actually,
guiding her.
her high school class. Yeah.
Okay, so doing her thing, and the film makes the decision. I don't put this on Liat. I put this on the film. Um, Decides very, very specifically to focus on moments in which she's talking about the walls of the Warsaw Ghetto, and then the film quickly cuts, not very subtly, to discussing the wall between Israel and Gaza. The movie is being very blunt in saying, pretty much the same thing, right? I'm like, you know what? No, it's not. Sorry, that's my earlier we talked about where's the line in New York when anti-Israeli protesters say we are here, we are Hamas, we love Hamas, and then finally Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez said that's my red line. So my red line is when you say the walls between Israel and Gaza and the Warsaw Ghetto walls are the same. So cancel me if you must. Be that as it may. Be that as it may, though, the movie, this will be funny, and I want you to tell your husband this, and I'm going to do a little reporting for you now. You said that the movie is, you said dangerous to Americans, and because let me just tell you that there is a website called Letterboxd, which is very important in the film enthusiast community right now. It's basically Facebook just for movie lovers, and
Ooh.
the number, yeah, it's an interesting site. The number one review of this movie, basically says, this is the last line of that review. I have little interest in seeing a film that shows a happy ending for one family's daughter while over 17,000 parents are grieving just a few kilometers away from Liat's kibbutz. So that sums it up. There's nothing you can do. There's no film you could make that someone who is already decided, a closed-minded individual, will not even give this film the time of day. This movie, although it is playing in North America, has not had very many reviews. I mean, it got a couple of the main spots, New York Times, the Industry Trades, Hollywood Reporter, and Variety. Variety's review is preposterous, written by an individual I'm not too fond of. The movie is not being taken in good faith, and this is as left as we're gonna get. You know what I'm saying? It's like, I was surprised, though, at a screening in New York, the film had a Q&A with the director and a woman by the name of Amy Goodman, who's a very, very well-known, extremely left-wing journalist, but always one who's been, she's not a propagandist. She's a legitimate journalist. She runs a program called Democracy Now! And has for like 35 years or something like that. And I was surprised to see Amy Goodman present the film, and she said exactly what you said at the beginning. This is a movie about nuance, and everyone should see it. I was stunned. I mean, she's a big chum of Noam Chomsky's, for example. No, they are like good pals.
Yeah.
So I was impressed to see Amy Goodman, but Amy Goodman's older, right? She's in her 60s at least. The younger generation, the kids today, will not even give this movie the time of day. Incidentally, that quote I just read to you from Letterboxd was written by someone that I used to be friends with, and I'm happy to say used to. I can't take it anymore. I have unfollowed him on social media. The other,
But I think,
yeah,
Jordan,
hmm
you very quickly said it was featured in the New York Times. That
yeah,
is huge that it was featured in the New York Times.
no,
That
it's
the
not
New
huge.
York Times reach is
No, no, no.
huge.
Yeah, but the New York Times reviews everything. It's not like it was a big win that it got featured. Now, if a movie opens a film forum, New York Times has to review it. It wasn't one of their staffers who reviewed it. It was a guy. I didn't read the Times review, actually, because I only get so many free clicks a month, so I didn't click on it. I probably
I'll
should
hook you
look
up,
at it.
Jordan.
I think that he liked it. I saw a little excerpt, and the person who wrote it, I know him as well, and he's a fair-minded individual, as are all the staff critics at the New York Times, I will say. I'll give them some, at least their arts coverage is pretty measured. So I don't know, but yes, it's a big deal that the New York Times covered, but they're not like every outlet did not cover it because it's like too much of a headache, or they don't want to be seen. I don't know why they didn't cover it, but as I've ranted about before, the New York media scene is pretty rough right now. I mean, you saw it with, well, you were on vacation, but the Zoran synagogue thing was just unbelievable. The guy had been on the clock for 9 days, And I was really hoping to give this guy the benefit of the doubt. 9 days in, it's like this event happens. It's pretty quick to say, I don't support that. And the guy's team was on social media for 24 hours yapping about every other topic under the sun. And it took him a long time to finally say, hey, don't praise Hamas. Do your thing. You can hate Israel all day long, as I do. And all you have to do is look at his past works. But you can hate Israel without loving Hamas, at least so loudly. That was the problem. Anyway, we're supposed to be talking about this movie, and here I am screaming and yelling again.
Okay, we're going to a short break, and then we'll be back with more on Holding Liat.
What if prayer doesn't work? This question strikes us as a distinctly modern one, an outgrowth of the slow disenchantment of the world. But in truth, the question is an old one, and one given space to breathe here.
Welcome to Thoughts and Prayers. I'm your host, Jessica Fisher. Join me on a deep exploration of the relationship between religion and modernity through personal stories, classical texts, and conversations with leading rabbis, scholars, and educators.
You're almost not supposed to be doing this interview.
Our prayers accumulate on God's doorstep, piled outside like an unimaginably tall stack of letters. We cannot give up on the relationship because God doesn't come to the door as quickly as we may like. So let's keep knocking. Perhaps the gates of compassion will be opened.
Join us every week on Thoughts and Prayers wherever you get your podcasts.
And we're back. I'm Amanda Borschel-Dan here with our movie maven, Jordan Hoffman. Now, Jordan, there are several interesting things for me, in particular, Amanda, in particular, in watching this film. One was seeing the inside of how a family was dealing with everything, because I know how a media organization is trying to cover what is happening. And so seeing and hearing the different interviews that the family was giving to the media, and then seeing their, inner life at the same time, was really fascinating to me as a journalist. But one of the other things that I found just amazing to watch is how quickly the tide turned against Israel in the United States. And a lot of the initial weeks, the family, the patriarch, the grandfather, Yehuda, and his grandson were in the United States, in DC. And we see, a supportive rally for Israel. And then very quickly, we see the rallies against the war and against Israel, calling for the ceasefire. Of course, Yehuda is overjoyed to be in that kind of crowd, was really unhappy with the pro-Israel crowd, just mentioning that. And it was just fascinating to see the tide turning so quickly. And you experienced that essentially firsthand in New York, did you
Oh
not?
yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, on October 8th, I knew the story. I mean, it was yeah, it was pretty weird living in New York at the time. But the morning I woke up on October 7th, I was in Allentown, Pennsylvania for some weird reason. And I saw what was going on, and texting with friends, and a friend of mine who's not even Jewish was like, you know what's going to happen next. Israel does not screw around with their defense. They're gonna do everything they can to wipe Hamas out for real this time. A lot of Palestinians are going to die, and this is exactly what Hamas wanted. And it does not take a brain surgeon to put those pieces together. That Hamas knew that they could not take down Israel with one attack on southern Israel. But they could goad them, poke the hornet's nest, and kill thousands of their own people, and get the world to say, "Oh my God, this is terrible." And everybody fell in line. And here's where I do sympathize with Yehuda a lot, as someone who really has the luxury of being in America and not there. And I don't like seeing anybody get killed. I don't like seeing any families ripped apart. So it's like you want to say, "Whoa, hold up," but dealing with Hamas is like, you can't talk to a wall. You can't make logic out of that. So
And that was
it's
interesting, actually, that
yeah.
came up in the film, because we have Yehuda, who is positioned as this extreme far leftist for Israel. Okay.
Yeah.
And then there's a conversation, if you remember, between him and his brother,
Yes.
who is a raging anti-Zionist,
Yeah.
U.S. professor of Middle Eastern studies, I believe,
Yeah.
who basically appears to believe that Israel's original sin is the Nakba, and it's debatable
Mhm.
whether Israel should exist at all.
Yeah.
That was my takeaway from his conversation.
Yeah.
And
He's pretty hardcore.
Yehuda,
Yeah.
yeah, is standing up to his brother Joel, and he's saying, "Listen, I'm against all forms of extreme, religious extremism on our side and on their side, and
Yeah.
it can't be a one-way thing." So
Yeah.
that was the one moment where you're like, "Okay, nuance,
Yeah. I mean,
100%."
that's the position of the Zionist left, and that's in the abstract. My personally, I am against all fundamentalism, and I think that there is. You look at Northern Ireland. You're just in Britain. In the 90s, there was a wall between Ireland and Northern Ireland. Now you can just drive right through, and it's not like everybody loves one another, but they're pretty cool up there. And that happened in our lifetime, right? I mean, so I'd like to think that someday there could be, détente. But Yehuda's position, which in Israel, I mean, your husband had to turn the movie off.
Well, no,
Yehuda's
it
the
was
power took care of
a
it for
force
him.
majeure.
It's a force majeure, exactly. But your husband would have turned the movie off based on it. In America, in New York circles, he's a genocide lover, right? Just by not leaving Israel, by not like the only solution is for you to just pack up your clothes and split and go back to Vancouver or wherever it is, and for your husband to go God knows where, because he was born in Israel. So I don't know about that. But there were some. So I'm glad you brought up the brother, because he's fascinating, and he's a known person. I looked him up. He's been around for a while. He's a pretty well known guy in academic circles. Joel Benin is his name, and he teaches at Stanford. The other really interesting part, because you're talking about the phone calls, right? Because he's on the receiving end. Yehuda's on the receiving end of the media, and you see him almost going through a circuit. And you see them when they're in D.C. at the end of the day. They're exhausted because they've been repeating themselves, telling the same story to different senators and whatnot. The best part of the movie, I felt, a little bit of levity, is when he's on the phone with Biden. And Biden did right by the family. He got Liat out. He was like, Liat is an American citizen as well as an Israeli citizen, and he's going to work hard. And I don't know what Biden did, but let him take a victory lap on this one. He got the woman out. And he's on the phone with Biden, and Biden's talking to him, and he just interrupts him.
I know, and Biden's like, I lost a daughter. And he's like, just hold on a second. Chaya, come here, honey, hi.
It's so funny. At the end of the day, this fellow Yehuda, he's an old Jewish man. He's an old Jewish man, and he's on the phone with the most important person on the planet. And he's like, hold on, my wife's coming. It just interrupts the president. It's so funny. And I don't know that Yehuda even realized what he did. He doesn't care. He's doing his thing. And like I say, I can't put myself in his shoes. I don't know what was going on. The other important thing to talk about, a nuance, and there, you got to take Liat at her word. Her husband died. We don't know when and how. We know that a lot of people that when they were kidnapped were put through hell in Gaza. Liat's experience was not that. She was taken to a family that treated her well. This is her words. They fed her, they kept her safe. They were concerned about her medical conditions because they needed an asset so that they could trade back, which is what they did. They traded Liat for, I don't know, 10 or 15 prisoners, Palestinian
I think
prisoners.
150, if I'm not
Well, it was
mistaken.
I don't know if it was 1-to-1, but she was part of a group. But she was not tormented physically or psychologically, other than being held captive and not knowing what was going on with her family, if her kids were okay, which is certainly torture in itself. But while she was there, she even said that she, had meals with these people, and they were, I guess, relatively kind to her. And that's something that, if you look at some on the lunatic left, they seem to think that they were all treated that way, and any other conversation is a lie, which I think is not true. I think that she was lucky enough to go to a place where they treated her according to the Geneva Conventions or whatever you want to say. I don't know. But that is important. I mean, it's true. I mean, Liat said. And
And
Liat,
it's also important to recognize that she was released within under 60 days. I'm terrible with numbers, but under 60 days, whereas we're in day 830 of the war as we're recording. And of course, the experience of so many others was so different. But that particular deal, it's worth noting, got out some 97 um, Israelis and Thai hostages. They were released then, and that left about 150 still in captivity when the war proceeded again after that truce, that very fragile and temporary truce was up. And Liat continued her peacemaking efforts, and I think that's also really important. At the beginning of the film, the father Yehuda is saying, "I think this is what Liat would want," and
yeah,
indeed it
yeah,
is, or it appears to be, at least in the framing of the film.
yeah.
And she spoke at the It's Time conference, which brought a swath of the left together to, call for a ceasefire and for peace. And she is a voice. She's a real voice for this tiny
Yeah,
peace movement
yeah.
and for people who have this ephemeral hope that the two peoples can live
Yeah.
together.
Is she like a known quantity? Like as a person in the news, like you knew all about her before this film, or yeah,
Sure,
yeah,
and
yeah,
not maybe how to pronounce her last name, but
yeah,
because I'm terrible at that. But
yeah.
in any case, she's definitely a figure in a way.
Mm,
But there's this surreal situation where so many of these hostages and freed hostages have become celebrities in
of
a way
course.
that they wouldn't have even imagined even before they were released. And her voice is extremely poignant. Of course, she lost her husband. She was
Yeah.
held captive, and yet she's pushing for peace. So
Which is, I mean, maybe you and I differ here. I mean, I from the luxury of America, do find that, noteworthy and commendable in a way. I mean, I am, I come on this podcast and blow off steam and say things that I could never say in public in New York. But I am, someone who holds hope for peace and would, I've had Palestinian friends over the years, and I'd like for things to mellow out. And I use the example of Northern Ireland, I think, as sort of a North Star of maybe where this situation could turn someday. By many Israeli standards, I am pie in the sky, but I don't know what my opinions would be if I lived in Israel. I mean, I may be a little more like the grandkids of this film who weren't even interested in talking about politics at all. They just wanted their friggin' mom back and
yeah.
didn't care how it happened and were eager to go to the US and say to the senators, "Get my mom back, help us, please." That's all they cared about, and which is totally understandable as well. So the
Well, I think
grandfather who
Netta,
yeah,
the
yeah,
grandson, and his aunt, Tal, both voice that they're angry and they want revenge, but that the goal here is to get
yeah.
the hostages back, and
That's the
obviously
first thing.
including
Yeah.
their loved one. So that was definitely their light at the end of the tunnel. They need to get the hostages back. Whereas the grandfather was looking much more macro at, the long-term
Yeah.
solution. And Israelis, I would say, are not there yet,
It's
in
totally
that
understandable.
perspective. Yeah.
I mean, what I think when I was talking to somebody shortly after October 7th was this. I don't know the exact numbers. You and I are both bad with numbers, but a great many people died and were kidnapped on October 7th. And the numbers, I think, at the end of the day were somewhat equivalent to September 11th in America. Um,
So about just under 1,200 were killed on October 7th,
mhm,
2023, including the security personnel who were
mhm.
killed,
Okay.
and 251 were taken hostage to
Okay.
Gaza.
So a nice chunk less than September 11th is about 3,000. So it's a little bit less, but still a great number. And then you think about what is the total population of the US versus the total population of Israel. And you look at that ratio. And, living in New York as I did, I was like, everybody knew somebody who knew somebody who luckily no one in my immediate circle was killed in 9/11, but a very good friend of mine, his aunt was killed. I wasn't as good friend with them. I knew him a little bit. We've become better friends since. Um, So, but in Israel, it wasn't like that. It was like you knew somebody, right? Everybody knew
My
somebody. So,
husband's cousin was
yeah.
killed. My son's roommate was killed.
hmm
Another classmate was killed. Another son's several classmates
Yeah,
were killed. And then, of course, in the war, we all know at least 10 other people who were killed.
of course.
It's remarkable
Right.
how there's no degrees of separation.
Exactly. So that's something that a lot of Americans needed to understand when you put it, especially those who are old enough to remember 9/11, not to have been 5 at the time, to have been, adults, or as I was a very young adult. Now, I could hear some of my colleagues screaming, "What about in Gaza?" Right? Everybody there, and that's true. I mean, you're right. You're absolutely right. Everybody in Gaza knew some. Everybody in Gaza had their life turned completely upside down. Who was ultimately to blame for that?
Right, and I
Who?
think, that is when people are chanting "Free Palestine," what
Mhm,
I found noteworthy in the film as
mhm,
well is that in the beginning,
mhm.
before the tide turned, you could see it was "Free Palestine from Hamas,"
Yeah. That
and
was
that's
that was a phrase that died out very quickly in the US. I mean, it's a very common sense phrase to me, where if you went to a march and there were people screaming "Free Palestine," you could scream back at them, dot, 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 from Hamas, and you go, "Oh, yeah, that's pretty true." That one didn't catch on, unfortunately. Well, I do wanna say, that this movie is on what's called the documentary Oscars shortlist, which, there are a billion documentaries come out every year, and then they release a short list of, I don't know, under 20, let's say, that may go on to be one of the 5 nominated films. It might happen, um, because for all the reasons we talked about. I should also point out that one of the producers of the film is a fellow by the name of Darren Aronofsky, who is a pretty well-known American filmmaker. He did The Black Swan with Natalie Portman. He did Requiem for a Dream before that, and a few other good movies. His last few haven't been so hot, but be that as it may, always a critic. Be that as it may, he's sort of a known quantity. So the fact that his company's name is like the first thing you see when the movie starts, presents. So that'll get it even more attention. I think it's possible that it'll get nominated, and I think I don't know if it does, then more people will have to see it in the industry at least, and
But
then
I
it will
have a
be taken
question for
more
you,
seriously.
Jordan,
Yeah, go
okay?
ahead.
So we've talked a lot about the content of the film, and maybe I should edit down a little bit because we kinda schmoozed it out a
Oh,
bit.
we
But
talked a
in
lot.
any
Yeah,
case,
yeah.
in terms of the filmmaking, I thought the score was great, really great musical score. I can't remember the name of the person who did it, but kudos. And I thought the film was edited really well. I mean, you thought the ending was heavy-handed, but that was like the point. So they made
Yes.
it
Oh, yes. They
definitely.
made their point. They made their point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but I thought it came together beautifully, and they used a lot of, ways of capturing you into the scene when it's just 2 people talking on phones, far away from each other, and it still made it visually gripping, and so overall, I would say, like, in terms of filmmaking, not bad. In
Yeah.
terms
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
content, huge caveats, again, what I said, that
Yeah.
this does not reflect, mainstream Israel, but it is great as a micro look at this
Yeah.
one particular Beinin Atzili
Yeah.
family.
Well,
So
then I think
definitely not bad on that too.
it's good for Israelis to see the minority opinion. Then I think that's always important. I think what your husband said is very interesting. That people outside of Israel maybe shouldn't watch this and think this is indicative of great percentages of people, but it is indicative of a small percentage, and they have a right to be heard. Absolutely, that's what makes
Sure.
democracies like the U.S. and Israel terrific, is letting everybody speak their mind. The filmmaking is quite good. It's not a particularly long movie. I think it's under 100 minutes. They had months of footage. I mean, they were just rolling, rolling, rolling. They had great access. As you mentioned at the top, the director is a cousin of the family. And so he said, "Hey, will you let me do this?" And they said, "Okay," which is, I would understand if the family said, "Absolutely not. Get your damn cameras out of here. We're going through a crisis." But they realized that, it's an important record. It's the only record we have of something like this, not just for this, incident, but I think in general. I've never quite seen a movie like this before, of an extended period of weeks and weeks and weeks of just like being tense and not knowing where your family member is and keeping hope alive, and then going to Congress and then flying around the world. And it's a remarkable and very unique and singular film that's worth watching. It is upsetting. It does not. Oh, and we should have led with this. We're so bad. We it does not feature any violent footage of
Yeah.
October 7th, and that was something that you and I were both a little worried about at the beginning. I don't like
Yep.
documentaries that see that show violence like that, or at least if they do, I want to know about it in advance. So I checked and I read about it beforehand. So it that which is a decision that I think was the right decision to make. I don't think you
I
need.
agree
I don't.
100%.
I don't
And
think
I
you need
would
to show that.
also double down and say that by doing it through this framing of the three different generations and their different perspectives and these very, flawed individuals, it made it much more thought-provoking than had it been done through some kind of, crusade type, saint figure. And so I think bringing out the humanity of all the different characters and they're real people with real human flaws was such the right decision to go on this as
Yeah,
well.
the family yells at each other. I mean, the Yehuda and I'm blank
Chaya.
Chaya, yeah. They they get in fights. They sounded like my parents from time to time. I mean, thank
For
God my
sure.
parents have never had to argue about something so serious, but they do scream and yell at each other, but there's you know that there's love still there and then they're going through. It's amazing they kept it together as well as they did,
Yeah,
you know?
definitely.
So it's a big movie. I would understand if people were like said, "Ugh, this just sounds too emotional. I don't want to. I don't know if I could face it." But it's not.
I cried several
Yeah,
times
yeah,
watching this.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did. I did hit pause at one point because I was just like, "Oh, this is too much, man. I just got to take 5.
Yep.
I got to take 5. I'm gonna go make myself a cup of tea." But and I think another thing is that it's good. I don't know how much of this podcast you plan to edit down, but you could see it got me screaming and yelling, and that was the intention. Like it's a microcosm of the Times of Israel has the blog section on the left rail of the homepage where it says everybody giving their opinion. This movie is like 2.5 years of that blog section just coming to life. I mean, it's just taking the elephant in the room, really talking about it, sinking your teeth into it, taking a macro position, taking a micro position, and rolling up your sleeves and talking about the issue and trying to figure out what the solution is. Luckily, I'm not in charge, so it's not up to me. And that's how I feel about that, is I don't have to, when Trump invades Venezuela and takes out Maduro and you go, what the hell, Trump? That's a nation. What are we doing sending the army there? And then you read about Maduro and all these things, go, oh, that guy sucks. Oh my God, somebody had to do something. And I say, well, I'm not in charge. This is not
And who
my
knows,
headache.
Jordan, by the time this, appears, maybe there will be an invasion of Iran too. Who knows?
Ugh,
Anything could happen. That's what we're learning, right?
one
But Jordan,
one unexpected invasion a
apropos,
month, please.
exactly. Apropos Iran, let's remind our listeners what we're watching next week, at least the feature, the
Yes,
first feature.
we're going to be watching the new Jafar Panahi film. It was just an accident. Jafar Panahi is probably, now that Abbas Kiarostami has passed away, he's probably the most important living Iranian filmmaker. He has spent time in prison because that's what they do over there. And he spent a lot of his time under house arrest. And I think what we're going to do is watch another one of his films, which he made kind of in under house arrest. We'll probably watch Taxi. I
Yeah,
think
that's
that
the one
one.
I was thinking of as well,
Yeah.
because you said that it's a place where men and women could speak rather freely.
Yeah.
And so I want to also hear the woman's point
Yeah.
of view.
Well, then the
So,
other thing
yeah.
so he's made a number of films, Panahi, and another one of his movies, which we won't watch for next week, but if you want to, he made a film called The Circle in 2000, which is a really good movie, all about women's rights in
Mm.
Iran. And maybe one day we'll do a triple feature of Panahi. But anyway, so It Was Just an Accident is playing in theaters. Not wide release, but not just New York either. If you live in Columbus, Ohio, I think you can see it at your local arts theater. And that is a film that I believe will get some nominations for best foreign language film and possibly even best director for Panahi himself at the Oscars. And we will discuss it next week, and we'll decide whether it's not bad or meh, or what is our lowest
Oi.
measure? Oi, whether it's an O, an oi, a meh, or a not bad. We'll
Right.
talk about that next
But
week.
regardless, this week's Holding Liat, I think, is in the important category, the capital I
Yeah.
important category.
Yeah, I wouldn't even want to give it, if I was reviewing this for, years ago, I used to write for the New York Daily News, and we had to give star grades, 3 stars to 4.5 stars, 1.5 stars, which I always hated doing. It's so reductive and silly. I would feel stupid putting a star rating on Holding Liat.
Yeah.
What is my star rating? And then, if you dislike it, are you disliking the film, or are you annoyed at the content of the film? That's a different thing. I think the most ardent right-wing super Zionist may dislike some of the content here, but it's still a good film. It's still well made.
I would second
Yeah.
that, and I would say I was
Yeah.
annoyed at the content of the film, but that made me like the film
Yeah.
even more as a film. So
Yeah,
go
that's
for
fair.
it.
That's totally fair.
Yofi. And anyone who actually made it this far in
God.
our episode, kudos to you. Mamash kol hakavod, as we say here in Israel. 100% marks, and really thank you for your loyal listenership. So Jordan, thank you so much for joining me again this week.
Yeah, thank you. Next week will be much less unhinged, and
We won't, but okay.
Some of the emails are they love the fact that we just fly and go without a script, and some of the emails are like, oh, hey, get to the point. So
Yep.
that's kind of like that's a lot like the movie.
It's a schmooze. It's a schmooze. What can you do? Yofi. Okay, so wrapping it up for Reels, thank you so much for joining us this week on the Reel Schmooze. Please check out another installment next week. If you have any comments or questions about this or any other episode, please drop us an email to podcast@timesofisrael.com. This episode was produced by Ari Schlacht. See you next week. Until then, shalom.